everybody, what's up? So if you guys remember a couple of months ago when I made the video about how I moved to Australia, I mentioned that there was a thing that I tried to do illegally to try and get my visa, but I couldn't talk about it at the time because I was still too close in proximity to the people that I would have made a video about. But now that I live in Melbourne, I'm far enough away from them that and they don't watch my videos. It's time to tell you guys a story. To quickly recap, depending on what country you're from, you have to, in order to earn a second-year visa in Australia, complete 3 months or more of farm work. And I wasn't originally planning on staying the second year. I was planning on going back to Canada after the first year, but as my trip progressed, I realized I didn't want to go home quite yet, and I decided that I was going to try and earn my second-year visa. Now, what I had heard from a lot of people is that some farmers, if you pay them off, they'll just sign you off on your visa, but you have to be really, really careful because now the government is auditing you, and it could be really tricky because if they catch you being fraudulent on your visa, then you'll be immediately exported. What word am I looking for? Deported! Oh my god. It has been such a long week. You guys have no idea how long it took me to find the word deported. Okay. Back to the story. My point is, if you mess it up, you will be deported from the country, like, immediately. But I decided to take that risk and find a place that was going to let me be a nanny for them in exchange for a sign-off on my second-year visa. Now, I was having a lot of trouble finding a place that wanted a nanny in exchange for this because it's a really hard job to get. There are lots of people who would love to be a nanny rather than pick fruit or milk cows or what have you in exchange for their visa. So I was looking and couldn't find anything, and two of my friends who lived in the Gold Coast as well, they had found this lady that they were going to be nannies for, but all of a sudden they had to go back to Canada, so that woman was left without a nanny. So they forwarded her my contact details, and she was calling me and telling me how much she wants me to go with her because there was another lady who was interested in me doing it for her. Anyway, long story short, I ended up taking a flight to Melbourne and getting picked up by this woman and her husband in the smallest town I've ever actually lived in. It has less than 1,000 people. So I get there and something should have raised a red flag in my brain when I was on the phone with her for a couple weeks before that, because she kept on telling me like my kids are my prized possession, and she kept on sounding super duper stressed. She told me that she worked from home and that she would be there all the time. And I was gonna go there and take care of her kids while she got stuff done in her office. And she also told me that I was going to do some chores around the house whenever she had free time so that she could spend time with her kids and I could do what else needed to get done. Which is fine, I understood that. She has 2 little boys and they're 1.5 and 3.5. The 1.5-year-old, let's call him Luke, and the 3.5-year-old, let's call him Max. So I get there and she immediately gives me a roster. Now, if you haven't watched my Canada versus Australia video, a roster in Australia is a schedule, like a work schedule. And she had me listed on every single day from 7 a.m. till like 8 p.m. with maybe like a half-hour break in there every day for the whole week, except for the weekends. I quickly got a job at a restaurant on the weekends because I knew that I was gonna need some civilization time. So yeah, she gives me the roster and she gives me a welcome booklet, like a welcome, just a booklet with lots and lots and lots of rules and instructions about what she expects of me. And she was like, I want you to read over this so that you know like the protocol for basically everything that we do. And with that came 2 lists. One of stuff that I need to get done every day around the house, and the other of stuff I need to get done every week around the house. And I got the freedom to choose which ones I wanted to do when, and I had to pick a time where the kids would be playing quietly. Keep in mind, they're 3.5 and 1.5-year-old boys. They almost never play quietly, and she wanted me to find a time where they were playing quietly, but also safe, and do these chores quickly and efficiently, but some of them were ridiculous. For example, this woman, let's call her, I have my own nickname for her. Let's call her Pam. Okay, yeah, let's call her Pam. So Pam, that name actually fits her. Man, if you guys, okay. I digress. The list of things that Pam wanted me to do were clean the bathroom, clean the toilet and the toilet room because it's separate from the bathroom. I had to sweep and mop the floor of the entire house. I had to do all the vacuuming. I had to do her laundry and the kids' laundry. I had to constantly pick up after the kids. Obviously, that's to be expected when you're a nanny. But she was so stressed about mess that she didn't even want the kids to have a mess at the end of whatever they were playing with. So the kids got used to me picking up something like as soon as they walked away from it. If it were up to me, I would have taught them to pick up their things. But the thing is, she was more concerned about whether or not it was clean than whether or not they learned the lesson to pick up their things. I had to clean the parents' room and the kids' room, but in the kids' room, they had those like alphabet mats, and she required me to wipe down the mats, pull the whole thing up off the floor and separate all the letters from the puzzle pieces, leave it outside to dry, vacuum underneath their beds, organize their shoes, pull Max, I keep on almost saying his name, Max's bed away from the wall and like bleach the wall because he sometimes likes to put his bare feet on the wall like a regular 3.5-year-old. Luke liked to destroy Max's train set, so every day I was required to reconstruct the train set rather than just teaching Luke to not do it or keeping him away from it. I wasn't required to cook anything for them except for breakfast, and I had to clean the kitchen all the time, weed the outside garden, sweep the garage every week, tend to the veggie patch which they had let overgrow, and it was like my project. I had to do the dishes after every single meal, and since Pam liked to cook every single meal, and since she wasn't the one cleaning it, she decided to use every single possible dish that she could. Like she would mix something in one bowl, pour it into another bowl, and use that to like pour into a pan to cook. It was absolutely ludicrous. She expected me to do all of this while her kids were quietly playing. But get this, her kids weren't allowed to watch TV because apparently it destroys your brain cells before age 2. So also the 3.5-year-old wasn't allowed to watch TV. They weren't allowed to watch movies except for Max had seen the movie Cars at like a friend's place once. So that was like the only movie that he knew, which was fine with me, but he wasn't allowed to watch it when they were there. They also lived in silence. So when I first got there, after a couple of days of being there, I asked the dad, let's call him Rob, if I could plug my iPod into the speakers that I had brought with me for the kids to dance to. And he goes, yeah, I mean, like when we're both gone, you can play music, but Pam doesn't like to listen to music or let the kids listen to music because it stresses her out. And I was like, music? And he goes, yeah, well, I mean, she can't think when any music is on. And so then I started asking him about movies. I was like, what movies do you guys like to watch, you know, on your downtime? And he goes, well, I think movies are kind of a waste of time. I haven't watched a movie since like 1999. There's so much stuff that I could be doing with my life right now. I'm wasting my life away. And I'm like, okay, you and I have completely different opinions on this. Speaking of difference in opinions, Pam also once heard of this woman whose kids turned the hot water on in the shower and got like scalding first-degree burns or something, some sort of horror story. She heard that that happened once. So they had all of the hot water tempered in their house so that in case their kids ever get into the 2 doors that it takes to get into the bathroom, open the shower door, even though they're super little, and turn on the hot water, and for some reason the water's automatically like super hot without them realizing, that they don't burn themselves. Which means whenever I had to do the dishes, which was after every single meal, I had to boil water in the kettle and then pour it into the sink. I also, with all the baby bottles, had to pour boiling water through them and do this like extensive cleaning process, put them into a Ziploc bag and freeze them so that they would never grow bacteria. Like, I understand that your kids are your prized possessions, which I don't know why you would say it like that, but I mean, I get it. But like, your kids, when they go to another house and happen to turn on the hot water, they're gonna think that it's lukewarm, just like your damn house is. Sorry, I'm trying not to swear anymore because I've realized that I swear in my videos a whole lot. So I think I'm gonna try my hand at bleeping things from now on. Okay, I just had to do some stuff and now I'm back and I'm sure the lighting has changed. Where was I? I must have been talking about how she went crazy. She was always so afraid of me hurting her children. Like, they had 2 dogs, but they never let the children play with the dogs. They kept the dogs outside across the fence because the dogs would get so excited that they would, you know, run up to us because they almost never had human interaction, and they'd be so afraid that the dogs would knock over their kids that the dogs were never allowed near their kids. And I'm like, well, if you just let your dogs near them and taught them how to be calmer dogs, then you probably wouldn't have this problem. I mean, there are dogs that are super hyper, but like, you could at least try instead of worrying that your kids are gonna get knocked down by a happy dog. And the dogs weren't even big. And for that matter, I wasn't even allowed to let either of them get further than a meter away from me, because apparently down the hill, which is like half a kilometer away, there's a really shallow stream. But there's no way they could, like, it takes me like 5 minutes to bike down that hill to get to that stream. There's no way their 1.5-year-old boy is going to get down there with the mom at home and me at home, not doing anything but being around them. Not only did they not let them live their lives, Pam was so overbearing and such a stress head that one time we were at the dinner table and Max had Cars tattoos that we had stuck on his arms. Rob asked him about the tattoos while we were, you know, having dinner. And Pam goes, Rob, don't ask Max questions while he's eating because he has to learn to digest, right, Max? And Rob just sat there looking at Pam in disbelief because what mother tells the father not to talk to their son? Pam also was afraid of Max being made fun of in school, even though there's no reason he would have because he was actually a really cool little kid. But I could see her turning him into one of those brown nosers with the Argyle sweater vest, not knowing how to be friends with other children. She wouldn't allow him to say yeah. She made him say yes. And she was teaching him how to demand things. Like, whenever he needed a Kleenex, he would just shout, tissue! Or whenever he had to go to the bathroom, he would just have to yell, toilet! Like, he would scream it at you like a rude little kid, and it's all her fault. She would come to me and be like, I want him to have the most opportunities when he's older and I don't want anyone to make fun of him because of the way he speaks or whatever. And I'm like, well, you're teaching him completely oppositely. I didn't say this to her, but let your kid know what the rest of the kids are going to be talking about at school by maybe letting him watch like one show once in a blue moon. She didn't let him watch this one show called Peppa Pig, which is a really, really popular show with all the other little kids, because apparently the way they ask for things is, I want macaroni, rather than, can I please have macaroni? So she doesn't let him watch it. And the whole time I was just thinking, dude, your kid is going to be made fun of because you are making him into a self-righteous, special little boy. Like, he's special, but you can't teach him that he can just yell out demands. You know what it came to? Like, she wanted the living room so clean. She wanted every room so clean that it didn't even matter to her that he learned to pick stuff up. She just cared that it was clean. One time I was talking with Pam and Max went straight up to me holding a toy and looked at me and dropped it on the ground. And I could tell that he wanted me to pick it up. And so Pam actually was surprised and she was like, what are you doing? Geneva's not going to pick that up. And he said, yes, she will. That's what she does. And then hopefully that showed her at least a little bit how ridiculous she was being. And also, if I didn't get all the jobs done that I had to do every day, she would come home and be like, well, what did you get done? And I'd be like, well, I was looking after your kids the whole damn day. She didn't even get her office work done. She would go into her office, stress out so much that she got maybe one thing looked at, and she would come out and freak out at me because she had to come out because her kids were talking and it was stressing her out, and she didn't get what she needed done. And I was like, if you let me go outside with your kids without worrying about your dogs or snakes or them killing themselves on the trampoline, or maybe if you let them listen to music or do something other than bubble wrap their entire lives, then maybe you would get some stuff done. I don't know how she was such a stress head all the damn time. I don't know how she existed. It stressed me out to always be around her. I had to wake up, have breakfast, and be ready into regular clothes before 7 a.m. every day, because according to her, if I hadn't gotten myself ready before her kids woke up, then I would have to leave her kids in another room to go get dressed, and her kids could kill themselves. One of the final straws was when I was outside with Luke and Max, and another thing that I had to do, which I was doing at that time, was clean out her entire car. I had to pull out the car seats, wash everything, vacuum the inside, like literally from top to bottom, a car that I was never allowed to drive and almost was never in. And so I decided to pull the sprinkler out for Luke and Max to play in. Now Luke, the 1.5-year-old, had gotten super duper muddy. He had already run out with his clothes on and everything, which is completely fine because it was a really hot day. But Pam was inside and I was outside. I had to keep an eye on them while I was cleaning the car. And I decided that I was gonna take Luke's shirt off because he was like soaking wet. But what I didn't realize is that Luke had 2 shirts on. The one underneath was one of those things that like snaps up right here. I didn't realize that he was wearing that because I had just happened to have that morning off and the dad, Rob, had dressed him. I thought it was all one shirt, okay? So I go to pull Luke's shirt up above his head and it gets stuck right here. And he starts screaming because he's 1.5 and it's stuck in his head and it was scaring him. So either I hurt him by pulling back down or I just try and pull it up and over his head. So that's what I tried to do. So I'm trying to pull it out and up, not realizing that there's another shirt on underneath, and Pam runs outside and snatches him from me, and she starts crying, and she was like, "You hurt my son today. I'll tell you the truth, Geneva. What you just did to my son was so cruel. I don't think it's a good idea for you to be here anymore if I have to worry about the safety of my children with you." And I was like, "Oh my God, what? Are you being serious right now?" And she was like, "Well, if I'm gonna trust you with my most valuable possessions in life, my children, then you have to pay attention to this kind of stuff." And she's like sobbing and she's so absolutely out of her mind upset. And I was trying to calm her down. I was like, "I'm sorry." And then fast forward to the next day, I decided to confront her about this, telling her that I was indeed dedicated to the family, not gonna hurt her children. And she was in the kitchen, and there's like a little kid lock door thing separating the kitchen from the rest of the house. So the kids are not able to get in there. You have to like pull something up and out and in and then move it out. I don't think that made sense. So the kids are never allowed in the kitchen, nor are they able to get in there anyway. Okay, so she's in the kitchen. I'm standing on the outside of the barrier thing, and I decided to confront her about this. And we ended up getting into a conversation about everything that I do that endangers her children, such as accidentally not fully closing the cutlery drawer, which is this old wooden drawer that gets stuck no matter what. Like, you can't really push it all the way in. And it would always be slightly out, like not enough that there was space, but enough that it was just like slightly ajar. No one could possibly have a problem with this other than her, okay? So we get into this conversation. It's like snowballing about stuff that she said she let go, but then this was like the last straw, this thing with the shirt. And in the middle of this, she keeps on raising her voice more and more, and I am staying completely deadpan, not in a cold way, but just so that she doesn't get any more escalated. And she keeps throwing out the F word in front of her kids. Her kids are literally right here. And she starts reprimanding me about this drawer, and she goes, "Because little hands can do this." She grabs it, yanks it out of the wall, and cutlery smashes on the floor. It's like the loudest sound, and it all goes psh everywhere. The kids start crying, and she's like banging on the fridge and freaking the out. And I'm like, whoa, okay, I need to just go to my room. We clearly need to be separated for a little bit. That weekend, I went to Melbourne for the first time to have a think about what I was gonna do. I ended up coming back from the city thinking that I was going to stay because I'm like, I'm not a quitter. I shall stay and push through, because I also at that point was like 3 weeks in and I didn't want to have to go and find another place that was going to sign off on my farm work. Oh, did I mention I was not getting paid to be their nanny? I was working every single day from before 7 a.m. to after 8 p.m. with maybe one break thrown in there for free. So after I came back, I'm thinking this, right? I'm going to stay, I'll push it through, I'll see it through, whatever. And I went into the restaurant and was just ranting about her to my boss, who, it was a town of less than 1,000 people. He knew exactly who I was talking about, and no one talks to them, these people. They live at the top of a hill and literally never come down. And he kept on being like, Geneva, I'm not okay with this. I can't have you be going through this living hell and not even being paid for it. Like, these people are out of their minds. He was like, Geneva, I'm going to organize for you to live with a girl who works here and work for one of my friends. They'll teach you everything and you can move out of this place. I'm not going to stand for this anymore. Like, you can't even say no at this point. So quickly that fell into place. He had organized it with everybody, and all I had to do at that point was tell Pam that I was gonna leave. So that night I went up to her and I was like, Pam, how would you feel if I didn't stay the whole 3 months? And this was me just trying to ease her in. And her eyes widened and she was like, what are you talking about? And then she tells me in a weirdly calm but also frantic manner that if I'm gonna move out, it better be sooner rather than later. I took that as a go-ahead, and then the next morning, Pam comes home from milking, quickly went and had a shower and grabbed her kids and left. I thought it was my break, so I was like, okay, see you soon. And she goes, have a good rest of your day. That's what she said to me, and I thought that was weird, but I didn't say anything else. I was like, yeah, okay, bye. And so I decided to vacuum and like keep cleaning. I didn't pack or anything. And then hours go by and she doesn't respond to my text messages. She doesn't answer my calls. And then all of a sudden I come out of my room and I see that her car is in the driveway, and I look around the house and there's no one in the house. The whole house is silent and dark. And I notice that her bedroom door is closed. And so I walk over and I don't say anything, and I heard her whispering a children's story to Luke and Max because she didn't want me to hear them. Like, she was specifically not wanting me to hear them, as if I'm about to murder their whole family. I texted Emma and I was like, is there any way I can move in tonight? And Emma was like, yeah, sure, you can, I'll figure something out. You can most definitely move in tonight. And I'm packing all of my stuff as quickly as possible. While I'm packing, Pam comes to my door and she goes, I just want to know what I could have done better, like why you're leaving. And I was like, and I didn't want to be super hurtful because she was right in front of me and she had crazy in her eyes. So I just told her that, like, honestly, I just don't think I'm a good fit here. But then it ends up escalating to Rob standing behind her, the kids being somewhere behind her, and she kept on bringing stuff up, like little things that I had never even thought that she had a problem with. So in this little rant that she's taking, she decides to bring up my Canada versus Australia Volume 2 video. Most of you guys have seen that video. She goes, you made fun of us in your Canada versus Australia video. I was like, what are you talking about? And she goes, you said we bang on your door and yell at you about tea. And I was like, okay, you've got to be joking. Like, you're joking, right? At that point, I was just like, would you like to watch that with me and show me the part where I said that you bang on my door and yell at me about tea? That was the moment where I realized you can't even fight with a person like this. She will make everything up. She was so dramatic. It was unbelievable. In this last blow up, Rob kept on yelling at her to shut up. He was like, stop talking, you're making this worse. And I was trying to be so civil and she kept on yelling at me. And he goes, shut up, stop it. And the kids are screaming behind her. And then I decided to close my door because I'm like, hey, I'm done here. I need to pack up my stuff. And they're still screaming behind me. And she kept on like crying. And she's like, oh, and she's like, blah, 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 talking to him. And he grabbed something that was breakable. I don't know what it was because I was out of the room at that point. And he smashes on the floor and everything goes silent. And then you hear Max start to whimper and cry. And then he's like, I'm sorry, I'll buy you a new one. At that point, I was like, oh my God. I cannot pack this fast enough. I was just throwing everything into my suitcase, and I texted Emma and I was like, can you pick me up? And she goes, yes, absolutely. Tell me when you're ready and I will pick you up. About an hour later, I'm almost done packing and Pam comes to my door and she said, are you getting a ride from Emma? And I said, yeah, Emma's gonna come pick me up. And then Pam goes, well, I would rather me drive you to her house because I don't want her knowing where I lived. My children live here. I was like, do you think Emma's gonna kill your children too? It is unfathomable to me that people can be this much of a stress head and still exist and not implode. Oh, I forgot to say, they also said that they weren't gonna sign off on the farm work I had already done. And they said, if we hear anything bad about ourselves at the end of this 3 months, then we won't sign off on your farm work. It's a small town, we'll hear it. And then they said, if we haven't heard anything bad about ourselves at the end of this 3 months, then we'll think about possibly signing off on the 3 weeks that you've already done. And I was like, okay, first of all, that's extortion. And second of all, what they didn't realize is that you can't really back someone into a corner if they have a back door. I had enough time to earn an entire 3-month visa with someone else and not ever have to speak to them again. I'm not a spiteful person at all, but if someone asks me how my time was with them, there's no way I'm gonna lie and say that it was excellent. It was the worst time of my life. I was living in hell. And they also, if you guys have seen my What I've Learned from Milking a Cow video, were the ones who didn't believe that I could milk a cow. They said that they didn't believe that I would be strong enough, and they thought I was too girly to milk a cow. Pam had said, milking is really hard. You're gonna get really dirty. Are you sure you can do that? And the dad, Rob, whom I had confided in up until that moment, had said, with milking, you're gonna get really dirty, you're gonna have to shower a lot. Give it a couple of days and we'll see how you go. And I was like, okay, if there was any doubt that I couldn't do it beforehand, I'm definitely gonna be able to do it now. It made me hate them so much more. In the car on the way to Emma's house, I was telling Pam that it was spiteful that they would not sign off on the work I've already done simply because it didn't work out. And she was like, we are not spiteful people, Geneva. And she didn't let me keep talking. She just kept interrupting me to tell me how non-spiteful they were. And then we finally pulled up to Emma's. She got out, she said something to me, got out of the car, slammed the door, grabbed my stuff, threw it on the lawn, and just said, okay, bye. And Emma was standing outside and she was like, okay, bye. And that was it. And then when I moved into Emma's house, it took me like a whole 24 hours to realize I will never have to speak to them again. And then this is the last cherry on top. I promise I'm almost done this story. Emma has a 2-year-old son, and Pam and Emma both bring their kids to this like music playgroup kind of thing. And so not even 48 hours after I moved in with Emma, Pam sees Emma at the music group and she goes, hi Emma. And so she greets both of them by name, whom she had only met once. And then she goes, oh, by the way, thanks for taking in, and then Emma goes, Geneva. And Pam goes, oh yeah, that's right, Geneva. Thanks for taking her in. And then Emma knew what I had just been through. And so Emma goes, oh no, it's no problem at all. Geneva and I are having a blast together. I'm really glad she moved in. And Pam goes, oh. And that was that. I don't even know how I'm gonna edit this story. It is almost dark out. I'm never gonna be a nanny again for the rest of my life. This has forever tainted the experience. I love kids, I'll babysit, but I will never live in a house with a family. This is the most ridiculous experience I've ever been through. Let me know if you guys like these story time type videos. I love you guys a lot and I'll see you all next Thursday. All right, bye.